the seed germinates and grows into the bark of the parent tree that it's landed onto, or the host tree, and it will actually graft itself to it, and it's semi-parasitic, so that it's actually taking nourishment from that host tree, but it's growing almost as a separate plant. It'll flower and fruit there with the aid of bees and other insects and so on. But it can basically, as far as I know, attach itself to any tree. I've seen them on all sorts of things. So if they can do it, I don't see why people making a choice and trying to graft a peach onto an apple wouldn't work, but I've never ever heard of it being successful. And it was just a beer paddock at the time, wasn't it?
But we both, well, Nev had been living on the land in a small way, just north of here in a little place called Ethelton. And we were both in the hippie era, the back to nature, that sort of thing. And that we believed in all that stuff.
Yeah,
you know.
so that was back in 1976, I think, when Sue and I first met. Or
Yep, about that. Yeah, and married in 78.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a sort of a time when people believed that, well, certainly I believe that the hippie movement was part of something new and enduring. I didn't really recognise that in 30 years' time, say, I'd be looking back on it and just recognising that it was just another fashion, in fact. But it was a fashion that I've sort of stuck with to a large degree.
Lay all their eggs in the nest boxes, and then at lunchtime I let them out. Come on, girls. Out you come. Come on. Yeah, so they've laid the eggs, and they're all different, which is lovely. I'm not sure which hen's laying which eggs. Sometimes I know, but I don't know at the moment. It produces steam, and as the steam comes up here, it carries with it sort of the volatile essences of the plant that's in the bottom, and as it also passes through the column where there is vegetative matter, it draws out more volatile essences and the essential oils, comes down the swan neck and then into the condenser coil, and this little condenser pot has got cold water in it. The steam condenses and it drips out here and goes into my separatory funnel, so it's a bit like a chemistry lab. I have a funnel there, and so the hydrosol, which is the condensed steam, is on the bottom, and floating on the top you'll get your essential oil. It's really, really lovely to do. I enjoy it very much. And then I can use that essential oil in my reflexology practice on people's feet. Yeah. Our choices were so different to most of the choices of all our neighbours and our community. So we were socially isolated within this community. I mean, we had friends.
Well, often those friends were elsewhere.
Yes, like Dave and Blanche, or Dave and Eve, who were further north, and people, But actually, the longer you stay in one place, and the more people look at your choices, I think they feel threatened less by them perhaps, and can also see the wisdom in some of them.
Yeah.
And so now we sort of fit in to the community more.
Yeah. Sue and I were lucky in that before we met, we each aspired to live a life like this. And so it was easy for us to come together and fully endorse the direction that we wanted to move our life in. I mean, we were both convinced that humans were having far too much impact on the environment, and we believe that people should be living a simpler life, not just using non-polluting chemicals, but actually consuming less of all sorts of things. And we painted a picture in some people's minds of a world that was sort of teetering, you know, that we were having far too much influence on the environment in a negative sense. And I do know there are people that I came close to arguing with who now think, yes, you are doing the right thing, even though they themselves aren't making many efforts to do something similar.
So this is our outdoor bath, which is lovely in the
But
evening.
it doubles as a smokehouse.
Oh, they look good.
You want me to carry some?
I'll hand them to you. Oops.
We better come around this side. Yeah, I thought they might have been darker than that.
Yeah, I probably didn't keep the fire running for as long as...
Right.
So those ones I think are spiced ones.
Yep.
So if technologically the world collapses, we won't have any more of these either. You know, a foundry has to produce all these lovely metal things. But anyway, we're assuming that we have this and it will last as an heirloom for our grandchildren, if they live in this house, maybe even our great-grandchildren.
And so I made this on the ground. The whole wall was lying on the ground, and this was a big mortise and tenon joint with the end poking through. And I thought I could probably just carve that. It might look really interesting. And then once the whole thing was carved, we then lifted that whole section of wall up and then added all the other structure that holds it together. I just started to realise that there must have been a time when human beings were unaware of the world of geometry. I saw it as being so abstract, and I just imagined the first person who ever saw, say, for argument's sake, an equilateral triangle, and him having this image in his mind and then trying to convey to other people this thing. Because there wouldn't be any equivalent in nature. It's not like you could look up to the sky and see a triangle there. If we see a triangle in the stars, it's because we've superimposed it on there. So where did this whole thing come from? And he would have, best thing he could do was get a stick and scratch an image in the sand perhaps, and his friends would look at it and say, you know, they'd probably think he was crazy. But I realised that really it's a real domain, you know, it's part of mathematics, and mathematics help us understand the world, and in some ways are part of the sort of system of design that's inherent in the world. And so I started to realise that the triangles and geometry had started to assume a sort of a sacred relevance to me. I can't say there's anything specific about that image that's important. It's just me playing with some of those elements, that's all. Like the road sign up there, it's just whimsy.